Let us now settle. Is this on? Let us now settle into a spirit of worship with a moment of quiet to be followed by the music from the bell choir, Jesus Christ is risen today.
Our chalice-lighting words this morning are those of the Reverend Michelle Collins. This flame burns for what might be, for hands that help us up and point to the rising sun, for hearts that whisper, what if? For dreams that blanket our imaginations with what might be. May our chalice shine light for our work of becoming.
Can you play the notes? The A too. Please repeat after me. Hold on.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Worcester, a congregation of love, hope, and justice, inspiring people to take on the challenges of a changing world. My name is Andrew Wilkin, and I am one of your worship associates this morning. We begin by acknowledging in Worcester, Massachusetts, we work, learn, live, and worship on the seized ancestral homeland of the Nipmuc people who thrive and remain active as the Nipmuc tribe. If you would like to learn more about the Nipmuc community, please see the brochure in our foyer. We offer a special welcome to those of you who are new or visiting with us for the first time this morning. We are delighted that you are here. We hope that you will join us in the fellowship hall following the service for refreshments and conversation. If you have questions or desire more information about this service or any of the ministries and programs of this congregation, please do not hesitate to ask. We invite you to fill out one of the cards found in the pews. These cards can be placed in the offering plate or given to one of the ushers or greeters this morning. For those of you joining us online today, we offer you a very special welcome. For safety purposes and so that we might come to know you better, as you are able, please place your name on your video feed. Please take a moment to sign one of the attendance clipboards that are now being circulated. Though you are not obligated to sign, we appreciate your information and will use it only for church purposes. During the service, we offer an opportunity to share a brief personal joy or sorrow. If you would like yours to be read aloud by the minister, please print it on an index card in the pew and drop it in the collection plate when it comes around. These cards will also be posted outside the minister's office to be shared with our friends at other services. For those online, you can place a joy or sorrow in the chat, and we will share it during this time in the service. In the foyer, there are listening devices, large print service programs, and hymnals for those who may find their assistance beneficial. Please see one of our ushers who will be pleased to assist you. I now invite you to turn your technology to worship mode. Finally, please note the announcements on the back of your program. There will be a time for short verbal announcements following the postlude. We are glad you are here. We hope that this morning is an opportunity for rest, reflection, and rejuvenation.
Good morning. Our opening words are from our own Reverend Aaron Payson. The long life of love. Friends, come into this place of renewal and celebration, where winter's long silence gives way to the soft insistence of spring. Come with your questions, your doubts, your hopes, for ours is a tradition that honors them all. This morning, we gather in the spirit of Easter, not to celebrate a single story, but to honor the many afterlives of a story. The way a life can ripple outward, the way a moment of courage or compassion can echo far beyond its time. Here, we appreciate that across centuries and cultures, across religions and retellings, across households and heartlines, love keeps finding new ways to rise. What we honor today is not a miracle locked in the past, but the stubborn, renewing truth that love refuses to stay buried. It grows new roots. It takes on new forms. It lives again in us. So let us open our hearts to this season of becoming. Let us welcome the stories that shaped us, the memories that guide us, and the love, ancient and immediate, that continues its long afterlife through our hands and choices. Come, let us worship together.
Please join together in our opening hymn found in your gray hymnals, number 269, Lo, the Day of Days is Here. I would like to invite our basket bearers to come forward at this time, members of our religious exploration program who during our worship services have an opportunity to collect change for change, their ongoing contribution to the emergency fund of this congregation. So if you have change that you'd like to contribute this morning, please raise your hand and one of our bearers will find you. So, yes, I'm the Easter Bunny. I'm the Easter Bunny. We are the Easter Bunnies. And the story that I want to tell you today, I think my friend here will understand too, is the year that I almost forgot how to hop. Can you imagine a bunny that does not know how to hop? Well, you see, even magical rabbits have hard seasons. One winter, the snow fell so heavier and so deeper, and it was so cold that by the time the snow disappeared, my paws were tired, my whiskers drooped, and when I tried to hop, I only managed to sort of a slow, wobbly hop. You know what I'm talking about. Not very bunny-like at all. I worried, how can I bring spring if I can't hop into it? So I did what any sensible rabbit would do. I went looking for help. First, I asked the birds. They were practicing their spring songs, warming up their voices. I wonder what birds warming up their voices sound like. I love the fact that in this congregation there are no caws, right? There are no crows, right? No turkeys. Yeah, see, there you go, right? Had to call them forth, right? I said, excuse me, please tell me how you remember songs after such a long winter. A tiny sparrow fluttered right down beside me and chirped. We don't remember it. We listen to it. The world hums a tune, and we join in. I closed my eyes, and I listened. And under the thawing ground, I heard it, a faint, patient hum, like the earth whispering. We hear it. Not yet, but soon. Next, I asked the flowers. They were still tucked in the ground, but I knew where to find them. What does a flower tucked in the ground look like? Can you make one yourself, tucked in the ground, like a flower? Listen, just turn around, cover up like you're under the covers, throw the sheet over your head. That's what we're talking about. And I said, hello, down there. How do you know when it's time to bloom? And the crocus, that wonderful little purple flower that comes out regardless of whether there's no snow or snow, you know the one I'm talking about, answered in a very sleepy voice, we don't rush. We rise when the sun feels warm enough to trust. Warm enough to trust. I tucked that wisdom into my fur. And then I asked the eggs. Yes, I talk to eggs. You would too if you had my job. How do you stay brave in the dark before you hatch, I asked. And one egg wiggled and said, we don't know what's coming, but we know we're not alone. And that's enough. I felt my whiskers lift a little. Finally, I found some children to ask. I peeked into this room where they were all gathered, and not almost like this one. In fact, exactly like this one, right? And I saw children, they were playing, and some of them were like drawing on the floor, sidewalk chalk. And I said to one of them, "Why are you drawing flowers before real ones come?" And that child looked up at me and said, "Because sometimes you have to imagine spring before you can see it." And suddenly I felt something inside me stretch, wide, and wiggle, and lighten. And I tried to hop. A small one, and then a bigger one. And then a hop so joyful it sent me tumbling into a patch of last year's leaves. I laughed, and the children laughed too. And the earth seemed to laugh with us. And that's how I learned to hop again. Not because winter ended. Not because everything was easy.
Sit down. That's too tall.
That's too tall.
No.
That's right, see? Not because everything is easy. But because the birds reminded me to listen. And the flowers reminded me to trust. And the eggs reminded me I wasn't alone. And the children reminded me to imagine what's possible. Spring didn't arrive in a single moment. So today it arrived in many small kindnesses shared between all of us. So today as we celebrate Easter and spring and new beginnings, I bring you eggs full of color and sweetness and hope, not because I'm magical, but because we all are. Every one of us helps to bring spring into the world. Now, are you ready to hop over and find your eggs? Shall we send them forth? Bye-bye, bunny friend. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere, you may go.
Go, 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 go,
A quick change artist I ain't. Those onesies are not only tough, but they cling. How those of you who wear pantyhose survive, I have no idea. Of the empire. We will be known as a culture that feared death and adored power, that tried to vanquish insecurity for a few and cared little for the penury of many. We'll be known as a culture that taught and rewarded the amassing of things, that spoke little, if at all, about the quality of life for people, other people, for dogs and rivers. All the world in our eyes, they will say, was a commodity. And they will say that this structure was held together politically, which it was. And they will say also that our politics was no more than an apparatus to accommodate the feelings of the heart, and that the heart in those days was small and hard and full of meanness. I came across this poem by Mary Oliver written in 2008, and I paused. The poet whose words inspired me and so often reflected the lessons of the gifts of nature had written a lament that still seems all too real these 18 years hence. I suspect it was a response, at least in part, to the Great Recession which rippled across our country and our world that year and the year prior. But it was more than that. It is, for me, a timeless description of empire. And in preparation for this morning, it also serves as a reminder of how Rome in general and Jerusalem in particular operated in the first century of the Common Era. The cultural and political landscape, which is the backdrop to the Easter story reverenced by Christian communities on this day and during this season. For me, it frames the essential truths that are made plain in the narrative of the death and resurrection of the prophet, truths that are as timeless as his message, reflecting something far more essential in nature, including our nature, than that which the poet laments. Even the rocks and the stones themselves will sing, says Scripture. If read properly, this, I think, is also the poet's intent. For beneath every lamentation is a cry to realize the possibilities yet born into a moment of grief and pain. A cry for possibility, that something new, something life-giving and loving is also achievable if we have but eyes to see and ears to hear and hearts to understand. Naming a burden awakens potential. And while so much of Christian theology seems tied to a personal relationship with this prophet, we often forget that Jesus was born into and ministered out of a tradition which cherished liberation as a communal reality, a realization that gives a different texture to the death and resurrection motifs within the tradition that carries his name. This point is often missed when stories of Jesus' miraculous healings are recalled in order to underscore the need for such a personal relationship. What often goes unnoticed is the end of those scenes when the one who is healed is told to go and tell others. On the surface, it seems like straightforward evangelism, doesn't it? Go tell others what the prophet did. But in another context, the command to go and tell is an instruction to take your liberation to the community you call home. Go and be with those you love. For the surest effect of the ostracization of empire is separation. To be an outcast is to be cast away from essential relationships, making the current hideousness of detention a primary example of empire's logic. So much of what is recalled by the Christian church during Holy Week seems to reflect this critique of power. Jesus weeping over Jerusalem, a lament for the lack of a consciousness of peace. Riding into town knowing what is going to happen wasn't what the crowd expected, and the realization that most of them who greeted him with Hosanna would be asking for him to be crucified only days later. There's that scene of the cleansing of the temple, you know the one I'm talking about, which is so mired in theological personalism that we completely overlook that it wasn't about those who were changing money at all. It was a castigation of religious authorities who were in service to the empire, for whom the temple was an escape, a den, if you will, shielding them from the consequences of their collusion with political authority, condemnation that he reiterated the next day as he was confronted by those very same authorities who, after that encounter, began to plot to kill him. The meal that he shared with his disciples in the upper room reflected the ethic that is at the core of his ministry. Remember that many of Jesus' most profound lessons were communicated in the context of a communal gathering that often included food. That loaves and fishes story, you remember? And the miracle of that, depends on the context you come into, or you discover it from. For those who want to personalize it and want to proclaim that it's all about Jesus' capacity, they'll say he blessed the loaves and the fishes, and there was enough for everyone. For those who come at it and say the story is really about Jesus' capacity to bless us, recognize that the act of asking people to share what they have often produces far more abundance by the end of it than by the beginning. I've told this story before in this pulpit, but I had a colleague who was traveling on a train through Transylvania, and she had a little wooden tray on which she put a little piece of cheese and sliced up an apple, and she took a piece of each and then passed it forward. And they passed it forward, and it went all the way down the car, across the aisle, back up the aisle, and came back to her, and by the time it was back to her, it was overflowing with food. I tell you, I think that's miraculous. When we can inspire each other to be compassionate and giving, and remember that our most profound gift to this world is our capacity to be in service to that which is larger than ourselves. We engage in the miraculous. This whole idea of engaging the miraculous is really the essence of liberation, especially within a context that was fundamentally speaking to the reality of those on the margins of Roman culture and the society in Jerusalem. For those who were marginalized in Roman society, "Give us this day our daily bread" was not just a prayer, but a necessity for survival. Along with decreasing one's debts, attaining food were two of the basic necessities of life for those who survived at the edge of community. So too did it reflect the great commandment that we love one another as we have been loved. It's important, I think, to note that much of the Gospel of Mark, one of the earliest Gospels from which the narrative arc of this story is reflected in the other synoptic Gospels, save John, is devoted to how much his disciples don't get it. Failure of discipleship occupies more than half of the verses describing the events from the Last Supper to Jesus' betrayal and arrest in the garden later the same evening. A reality that Unitarian Universalist Deacon Robert Cox once captured when he wrote, "Let's face it, every damn one of them was a loser." the remnants. Peter, hell, you couldn't even trust Peter. He'll cop out at the first opportunity, and the second and the third. Undependable and weak. That's Peter. He's not fit even to be a carpenter, and you couldn't even trust him with your tools. What do you do with a fellow like that? Put him in charge. Give him a big title. Say a prayer for him. So I love Peter, my poor rock. Failure of the faithful is if not outright complicity with religious and political authorities to maintain power through violence, seems a perpetual theme in the history that we know. One that is challenged ultimately by this particular narrative that we honor today. Jesus' arrest and persecution and crucifixion ultimately reflect an ethic of solidarity with those for whom this treatment was all too familiar. Modern evangelical Christian theology, turns this into a story of Jesus' sacrifice and resurrection as a demonstration of divine power to overcome physical death, and a demonstration of Jesus' divine nature in the process. I think such theology actually misses the point. For me, Jesus' death was an act of solidarity with those for whom witnessing or succumbing in such ways was a daily occurrence. It's a relational act, not a substitutionary one. And the purpose, which becomes most evident a day later, is to condemn the violence of empire as a means of control. To be clear, Roman society knew well the story of the empty tomb. Clemedes of Estephalia, Numa of Populius, Alcmene, Alimaxis, and Romulus were just some of the figures who disappeared from their place of burial or hiding. What's fascinating to me is how the story of Jesus' post-crucifixion appearances reflect a difference between all these well-known narratives of that day and the story of how the Easter moment is lived out. Not as a continuing call to hail Jesus as a king, but as a continuing call to be in solidarity in and with community that suffers. Remember that the vast majority of Jesus' post-resurrection appearances happen in community, save for the conversation between Jesus and Mary in the garden, just sort of that sideline conversation among couples as far as I'm concerned. You know, you can hear her saying, "What on earth are you doing here?" Right? And him saying, "Shh, go tell others." Courage is the ability to move beyond what fails us and how we fail each other, and the work toward those conditions that manifest the trajectory of our own divine capacity, to be in solidarity with and a force within the universe which compels us to love more than to hate, to give more than to receive, to share more than to hoard, to care more than to curse, and to companion more than to control. The miracle of Easter isn't that Jesus appeared beyond death. There are many such stories from antiquity. It is that what he taught continues to live in the hearts and minds of many. Memory is a miracle and a powerful motivation. Moving forward, I think the challenge is ultimately about how we carry such memory. On that first Easter, when Jesus comes into the presence of his disciples in Galilee, I imagine that his essence became real because in the midst of their shared grief, they shared stories about their experiences. You and I have been in these contexts. When we gather to mourn, and in the process begin to tell stories that bring the person who is gone alive in us and between us. And how often those gatherings begin with tears and end with laughter. Because there is something miraculous about the joy of carrying that memory and that ability to be able to reflect what is most important about an individual beyond their earthly existence. Many question whether or not the body, where do we go after we die? And I can't give you a firm answer, but what I can be firm about is part of what your afterlife is how you're carried by the community who loves you and remembers you and continues to honor you by trying to continue to accomplish the things that were important to you. And we all have moments where we have experienced that, yes? And every one of us wishes at that moment in our own demise that somehow the gift of our living is bestowed upon those who survive, so that there is meaning beyond the moment of death. Remember the Easter Bunny story this morning? How on earth are you going to forget that? And I guarantee you will never, ever unsee it. And I know that there are certain people here in the back that are going to make pictures in perpetuity. So I know what's going to happen on my deathbed. People are going to be scrolling going, "Remember this?" And I will smile and say, "Exactly. And I hope you do too." That story is the essence of relational theology. When we come into the presence of those we trust, when we open up about our own trials and fears, when we listen for the wisdom of others' experiences and recall the essence of our own capacity to thrive, we act in holy ways. On this Easter, may we each be blessed to find our way to those who remind us of our best and most faithful selves. And in that process, may we each have the opportunity to reflect the wisdom that is the product not only of our own experience, but all of the experience we carry in us, because others came before us and left us to be their legacy. That's the stuff of resurrection. The miracle of this seasonal moment when the earth itself sings back to us the essence of life continuing within us, between us, and beyond us. The possibility of that new life itself is the afterlife of love. Amen. And blessed be. We come to that time in our service and we're given an opportunity to share that which is symbolic of our own effort, our own values, our own ability to contribute to something larger than ourselves, an offering and service to the ministry and mission of this congregation, but also in service to the community that we support. And so I invite you in the name of all of those whom your life represents to reach into the pocket of the person sitting in front of you, pull out their checkbook, write the check you have always wanted to write, and our morning offering will be received. now to that time in our service when we're given pause to consider what is deepest in our hearts or most profoundly on our minds, or in the work of our hands in the days that have transpired or the prospect of days to come, joys and sorrows that touch us deeply and are given another measure of meaning because of our capacity to share them in the midst of a company that claims us as a co-journeyer. So I invite those of you who have joys or sorrows this day to come forward and form lines on either side of the sanctuary, to speak briefly into the microphone, first telling us who you are, so that those using our auditory enhancement devices and with us online can also participate in this important ritual. Then to light a candle if you so desire. Once again, for those of you who are online, if you have a joy or sorrow to share, I encourage you to put that joy or sorrow in the chat, preceded by the words, please read, so that we can find it quickly and share it during this important time. For the joys or sorrows to be shared this day. I will give you one joy. This is from the refugee ministry team, who writes, the sixth son of the family we have been supporting since 2022 will be the first son to start college this fall. He has been accepted to both Worcester State and Assumption with great financial packages. The team is so proud of him and his hard work.
Good morning. Bonjour. My name is Pauline Corshane. I dealt with ACE many years when we had the shoe boxes to fill at Christmas time. Excuse me. But then there were too many kids and we couldn't do it anymore. So their success became our failure in a sense. But we can do other things, such as providing them with gently used coats and jackets and boots and so forth, which we did this past winter. And we also did egg cartons, which we found out that they were used because people get bulk food and it was easier to give them eggs in egg cartons. Well, you did so well with the egg cartons that they don't need any more. Thank you. And thank you for everything else. I was going to ask for just one more week of either, just one thing, if you could all bring just one thing, either 3 whites, 1 black. Either pasta, just 1 box, or 1 package of jasmine rice, or, I've forgotten the other one, black beans or white beans. And that would be the end of our contribution for this year until the fall when it gets cold again. I asked if there was anyone else who had responded to their request, and there was. I don't know the name exactly of that church, but it was a Unitarian church, the Unitarian church in Brookfield. So I was very proud of that. Thank you for everything you've done.
Good morning. My name is Paul, and I have a joy. Yesterday, a friend of mine, his other half passed away through that Lewy body disease, and I called him up and just to wish him a happy Easter. And I said, well, why don't I go into Boston and just treat you to dinner because he's going to be alone. And he says, well, I got symphony tonight. He says, I got a better idea. Why don't you come in and you can watch symphony with me? And so I went to Boston. The Symphony Hall BSO was playing. It was really wonderful, and sounds better than the stereo, believe me. And as I was leaving, I was noticing, and including me, and they walked, and I said, And I said, to Dave, and he says, I guess I have that old person waddle, like that. And the woman back says, I'm insulted, right? And her friend says, oh, shut up. I thought, and I just had a smile for that whole thing. But and if I haven't said it, Happy Easter.
I'm Carol Howe, and I'm representing Garden On. I have a joy, we have a joy, or maybe it's a miracle. We asked for, we need mulch now for the gardens. And Leo was in his yard, and he noticed in his neighborhood there was someone cutting down trees. So he went and talked to the guy, and he said, "We could really use your mulch from your trees." And it turns out the guy was Portuguese. Leo is Portuguese, so they made a connection, miracle. And that day, he brought down a 5-foot pile of mulch. It was my height. Betty said it was 5.3, but I'm 5.4. and losing. And then this morning we came, and there was a 5'6" pile of mulch. It keeps coming, joy after joy.
Good morning, everybody. We're full of joy today, so here's an old song. I got that joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Wrong key, but last Sunday I was talking about getting my heart results last Friday, and I was very worried about them for about 5 months, I would say. And the interesting thing is I found on Friday you can have a very low heart rate, and they can do nothing about it because your heart's working just fine. So unless I have any symptoms over the next year, I got blessed for a year. I got that joy, joy, joy.
Happy Easter. I'm Deb Bono. I was as big as that when we first started coming to church. You can't see her, she just zipped away, but been here a long time. So I'm allowed to repeat a story once in a while. This one is a rerun, but it really hit me today with your incredible sermon, Aaron. Every Sunday you get better and better. Not that you ever not. My dad went into hospice right before Christmas. He died on Christmas Day, but that's not the story. And so he knew he had very little time. The hospice was going to end quickly. So me and my sisters were sitting around his bed. You know, some of you, when I look out there, you know of whom I speak because they all were active here as youth and adults. My sister Chris worked in the nursery. So many of the kids that run around this church 5 and 10 years ago and are all grown up now know her that way. We have a real strong affection and identity for this place. I go by here a lot just to drive by it. Anyway, but I think the wisdom that was imbued in my dad, everybody always told me he was very wise. He was very quiet. Again, if you knew him, you knew that. Didn't have much to say, did very well in his career, but he was a very modest, quiet man. And I didn't appreciate him to that degree until he was dying. We were sitting around his bed, and he said, "I know my time is short. I'm welcoming it. I've been sick for a long time. I'm ready to go." And he said, "I just want to say to each one of you individually," he said to my oldest sister, "you were the money keeper. She had money expertise. So she led the little family through it all, and he died with enough left over, thanks to her." My youngest sister, Felice, she didn't come here much towards the end because she was working on Sundays as a rehab nurse in a nursing home. So she was busy elsewhere, but she had a great history here with her kids. Me, I was involved in everything musical that this place had to offer. But that's not what he appreciated in me as he was dying. He said, "You are the light of the family. You're funny. You make us laugh." I've heard people laughing even through this hospice, which isn't supposed to be, but we had so much fun. I remember one day we ran down cellar because, long story, a member of the family had showed up and we didn't want to talk to him. So he was upstairs looking for us, and we were downstairs hiding. And Felice said to me, "Let's sneak out the back door and go to the Y and go for a swim." He lived right around the corner, too. And so we did. We got in the car, and then all of a sudden she turned to me and she said, "Who's going to feed Dad? If we're not there, he'll just lie in that bed and nobody will think of him again. They're all having too much fun inside." So we went back in and we faced the music and finally moved on. But he said to us, your thing is the funny. You're going to be the funny one that's going to make this joyful. It's going to be sad too, but I appreciate that in you more than you can know. So that was my dad, and those of you who knew him knew that he was a wonderful organist here. 40 years he goes back. And we just grew up in this church marveling at the kind of inspiration it served all of us as we grew up.
Good morning. Happy Easter. My name is Dawn Dowd. I have the honor of sharing joys and sorrows for our online community. Make sure I'm at the top. Okay. We have Act 2 from Wesley Shepluck. My thoughts are with my good friend Annalise. She was diagnosed with primary lateral sclerosis, which there is no cure. May God bless her. Also a longtime member of our church, Margie O's, was in the hospital recently. Our thoughts are with her and her husband, Larry. And I want to share, since you were talking about remembering people. My mom died in May, and I've had experiences of feeling like she's been here with me in church while we're singing, and it has bothered me, and so I've asked her to not be present here. I know it sounds like a horrible thing to say. Just accept it. But it's okay. But I was sitting over there and I folded up my order of service, and I don't usually keep it because I have it online because I'm working with the online community there. And as I folded it up, I remembered sitting with her in church because I would go with her. And it was a Lutheran church, and we would have the numbers of the hymns up on the sides of the walls. And we'd go through our order and take it apart and put it in the hymnal so we had all the hymns all prepped. And my family didn't want to do anything for Easter this year, which I'm okay with. Mom always wanted Easter dinner. My brother and his daughters, and I even were kind of like, yeah, it's all right. But it was a really happy memory to have of her. And I wanted to share that. Thanks.
Let's be in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Spirit of life, we come today remembering our best selves and remembering those who have gifted us with so much. On this day, remembering the prophetic and the sacrifice of so many that we might be able to live in the way of our own choosing. Let us be mindful of the gift of this life and the responsibility we have to gift life to generations to come. Help us to reflect the best in you, through us, so that all the world might live. We would remember on this day the prophet who told us over and over again, you please join together in our responsive reading this morning, number 628, found in your gray hymnals. In the tomb of the soul, we carry secret yearnings, pains, frustrations, loneliness, fears, regrets, and worries. In the tomb of the soul, we wrap ourselves in the security of darkness. Sometimes it prepares us for experience. Sometimes it insulates us from life. In this season where light and dark balance the day, we seek balance for ourselves. Would you please join together in our closing hymn, number 34, also in your gray hymnals, and rise in body or in spirit. Beloved, may the love that shaped us continue its long afterlife through our hands and our hearts. May the stories we tell give new life to ancient courage. May the hope we share rise again in every season. And may we become for one another the living proof that love does not die. Amen. And blessed be. My thanks to Matthew and to all our musicians this morning for their wonderful gift of music on this wondrous Easter day. I hesitate to ask, are there any very short announcements, like really, really short? Come up to the microphone and just start a line.
So our extraordinary and honorary member of the Stewardship Committee, Nancy Boff, is not here today. She's on the Cape, so we don't have a new number, written there. But we're right where Vanna White is telling us that it's just about 194K, just below 200,000. So we're going into the green next week. Please keep the pledges coming. Thanks everyone who has pledged. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I need another miracle. Now that we have piles and piles of mulch, we have to have cardboard to put under it. So they're waiting for your cardboard now. Last year we had wasn't a donation. We asked for donations of cardboard. So here we are again. Thank you for your cardboard.
Right. Sure. All right. So I'm just putting out here that we have a community clothing swap that's happening Saturday, April 18th from 1:30 to 4 here, and then drop-off donations can be next Sunday after church or Friday, April 10th from 5 to 7 in one of the classrooms here. So please do enjoy this opportunity to bring good, used clothing, right? Good used clothing. And shoes. Good used clothing and shoes. Good, did I say that? Good used clothing and shoes. Excellent. Seeing no one else, once again, beloved, worship in this place has come to an end, but our service continues. Next, with an opportunity for refreshment and conversation. May yours be a wondrous and wonderful Easter, and I hope to see you again very, very soon.